Welcome to an exclusive interview series presented by Digital Pioneers Network and Telegraph. On today's dialogue, we are thrilled to have our latest digital pioneer, Toby Eduardo Redshaw, who is a global top leader and Senior Vice President Innovation and 5G at Verizon, where he is directly working on building the future of Verizon's 5G network and the fourth industrial revolution. We're eager to find out more about Toby and his insight on the future of 5G, so I'll pass it on to my co-hosts, Gen Z Angelica and AI Mark, who will expand on his biography and share their opening thoughts on today's dialogue. Angelica, to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Angelina. So the recent and rapid global digital shift towards digital transformation has really placed our global remote connectivity at an all-time high with technologies like 5G, which we will get into, and artificial intelligence, revolutionizing our daily pace of things. And who better, of course, to speak to these innovations than our very digital pioneer today, Toby Redshaw, one of the top leading minds in the realm of cutting-edge technologies and the impact of these innovations on society, enterprises, governments, and the world at large. We will get to all of this and more in today's dialogue, and now I will be coming in from a Gen Z angle, focusing on the implications of hyperconnectivity on the next generation, what it means to upskill and reskill the young population for success in the digital economy 2.0, and of course, your take, Toby, on how Gen Z is going to influence the future of work. And with this in mind, Mark, I pass the microphone to you to continue on about the biography of our esteemed guest who joins us today.
Thank you very much, Angelica and Angelina. We are honored and delighted to have Toby Redshaw with us, the Senior Vice President of Enterprise Innovation and 5G Solutions at Verizon. A distinguished, very distinguished career that I would like to cover. Toby Redshaw is responsible for enterprise innovation and 5G solutions at Verizon. He previously ran 5G ecosystem innovation and product development, AR, VR, location services, geointelligence business. Prior to joining Verizon, Toby was the most recent CEO of Kevingston Advisors. Toby previously held global CIO positions at American Express and Aviva, a United Kingdom headquartered company with incredible assets under management. His responsibilities include risk, new product introduction, and e-commerce. He had simultaneous product marketing, strategy, venture, diversity, and technology responsibilities in his 6 years in Motorola, while also been an executive chairman of portfolio companies. Toby has helped to found and run a global startup, the first cloud-based solution platform and next-gen supply chain for hospitality out of Silicon Valley, China, London, Ohio. He started his career as one of the first employees on the international side of FedEx, where he had 17 years and focusing on information technology in Asia, Latin America, and United States. Among his recognition, Toby was named as the top CTO 25 most influential IT leaders by InfoWorld and top 50 global CIOs by Information Week. Toby is the founding chairman of the Kellogg Innovation Network, originally Kellogg Graduate School of Business, now Twin Global. He co-chairs the working group on scale disruptive technologies at Council of Competitiveness, and I have a great privilege to work in his team at that council. He's sitting at Dell IT Advisory Board and the Advisory Board of the Lake Nona Impact Forum. Welcome to our program where we will discuss innovation and artificial intelligence and all of those emerging technologies which are impacting consumers, both the consumers in the general markets, enterprises, as well as the younger audience that Angelica alluded. I want to begin very quickly now, get into the questions. And Toby, my first question would be, before Verizon, as I alluded to, you worked as a CIO for some of the largest companies, including American Express, as well as also Aviva. You started your career as one of the first employees on the international side of FedEx, and you had a 17 years career both converging business and IT. We call it business and IT management convergence. You were awarded many awards, as I mentioned, and selected as one of the 6 CIOs invited to the White House in 2011 to work with the top federal CIOs on the future of visioning, practical innovation. You are now at Verizon, a great company standing in the number 19 on the Fortune 500 list at 134 $1 billion in annual revenue. Verizon is one of the largest communication technology companies in the world, 135,000 employees, serving 99% of the Fortune 500 companies in over 150 locations with 1,600 retail locations. It'd be interesting to learn from you on the journey as a CIO and also in the journey in Verizon. And if you could share with us some of the transformations that you're seeing with CIOs, CDOs, CTOs in the digital age, combined with your recent experiences at Verizon.
So thanks for having me, and thanks for those very kind words. All of those things just make me conclude that I must be old. So to answer your question, I was talking to a young man the other day who's just starting an IT university career. And what I told him is, I said, look, it might be the most exciting time in technology now since I've been born, right? The confluence of big changes and acceleration in AI, big data, XR, IoT, next-gen cloud, connected by a modern super low latency 5G network will create an amazing flywheel of change over the next 5 or 6 years. To your question, that's going to change the job of the CIO, the CTO. It's going to make CDO type jobs more important. I think you're going to see AI and big data become extremely pervasive. It will be involved in everything. Operations, customer engagement, product, services will become proactive and preventative and pattern matched and peer connected and precise. And that is both good from an output perspective and an economic perspective. So, you know, as Charles Dickens said at the start of one of his books, it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. So if you like change, it's the right time to be in tech.
Thank you, Toby. I want to continue on now and discuss, again, a great company which you're in, Verizon, and everybody is now focusing about social innovation and society. So how can private organizations and enterprises such as Verizon and others step up and play a more active role in helping shape the kind of society that you and I, Angelica, Angelina, all of us want to live and participate? What needs to be done from the private sector? People seem to depend too much from the government, but what can the private sector do?
Yeah, so I totally agree. And when I look at Gen Z and even the millennial cohort, I feel optimistic about the future, and I'll touch on that in a minute. The simple answer to your question is awareness and leadership. Leadership in stating, look, we have not just one constituency in investors, not just one constituency in customers or one constituency in employees, but an equal set of 4 constituencies, those 3 and community. The second point is awareness, and you need leadership to do that, and not just say it, and truly invest time and effort and money. And we are very lucky to have a CEO, and you mentioned Tammy earlier, my boss, who deeply feel this, right? So when you see how much time they spend on this, how much money, how big of a focus it is for the company, and you see this in behaviors, not in press releases, then having that 4th constituency of community is hugely important. And I mentioned awareness. The future of brands will be anchored in trust, and not the authenticity Joe Pine trust that was cleverly born 20 years ago, but the next generation of trust. And the trust will be these 2 things. I not only trust you to do what you say you will do from a company and a product perspective, but I trust you to have my self-interest and my community's interests at heart. I think the Gen Z group and the millennial group together, if they do not see your company as a company that is being active and being positive in the community, especially along the lines of the global goals from the UN, they will simply shop less than you. So not only is it a leadership issue, but I think it's an awareness issue about the future you will not be a successful company if you lose a significant percentage of those two cohorts, because over the next 5 to 10 years, they are the majority of the spend. So I look to Gen Z and the millennials to be sort of the backup system for companies that don't have such progressive leadership yet. They will wake up and see the economics of it and go after that. So I'm very optimistic about that, and I'm super proud to be at a company like Verizon, doing the things that we're doing in education, doing the things that we're doing for community as we all go through this very, very difficult health and economic crisis.
Excellent. And now that we just touched upon Gen Z, actually, I want to take it back. And for the younger generation and a younger audience who's obviously tuning in to listen to when this webcast is available, it would be incredible to learn more about your background and your journey, of course, and how you ended up in your current role at Verizon for everyone tuning in as an inspiration.
So everything I've ever done when I got to a fork in the road was, what's the one with more flavor? What's the one with more challenge? I think everything in life, all flavor in life comes from challenge, right? Nobody ever said, I had a great week last week. I sat on the couch and watched daytime television, right? It was always something that you achieved that was a little hard, whether that's in sport or in life. So I always took those steps. The two things that really helped me have this unusual career, always building new things or transforming things, going from industry to industry, always technologically intensive. There's really three things that help me, right? I struggle with this. I'm not as humble as I should be, but I had enough humility to find older, smarter people. And when I was, 22, that meant somebody really old, like 35 years old. And I would just ask them questions and say, okay, look, I'm struggling with this. What do you think? And then you really, really have to listen and change your own opinions. Otherwise, there's no point doing that. So finding a partner, helper, mentor or two early on is really, really important. And then the second one is not trusting yourself for giant decisions, right? I have a little group of friends. Every time I consider changing a job, I call them and I go, what do you think? And we don't always agree, and they don't agree with each other. But those really big decisions, you really need an outside in view. Marcus Aurelius said, if you really want to solve a problem, go up to 30,000 feet and look down on the entire thing, not with just your perspective. So I think those two things are really important. And then the third one was, I was just super lucky. I started my career when I came to America the second time. I'm born and raised in Mexico. I came back, I went to Mexico after university, then came back to America in the 80s. And I got to join Federal Express, which was growing fantastically, where International was just a little baby green sprout coming out. And the entire company, this is back in the 80s, was run as, look, we are not just a transportation company, we are a technology company. We are technology and business married together. So that little bit of luck, helped. But I would say those two things, right? Be open to others' opinions. When you look at big choices, get advice. And I often turned down the job that was more money for the one that was harder and had more flavor. So get advice and always go get a mentor or two if you can.
Thank you so much for sharing such an inspirational story. I'm sure it will mean a lot to our younger audience. But I wanted to jump in and get back to your marked question about the future of work. You just touched upon that topic. So we're entering one of the most disruptive technology periods that we've ever had. So in your opinion, how will all of these technologies, including next-gen cloud, AI, Internet of Things, and particularly 5G, transform the future of work?
So I think we're accelerating the change of the future of work because of the crisis we're going through. An example is this kind of environment. To start at the end of your question and work back, 5G is not just a connectivity network. The big difference between 5G and the other Gs, 4G, 3G, is 5G has compute built in at the edge. So it's like connectivity plus a supercomputer in your back pocket, which is going to help accelerate things like AR, VR. It's going to let AI move right to the edge and happen in real time. So I don't have to collect tons of data, run a model, and then look at some anomalies or look at some pattern matching and go, here's how I change my operations. I can build AI into everything I do. So environments become intelligent, cameras become intelligent, the immediacy of here's my AR pop-up, here's my VR experience for that, or my add-on. So I think work and buildings become better connected from a human perspective, right? I think we find more ways to intelligently connect, more ways to layer on intelligence to this kind of engagement. For the output of this kind of engagement, AR layers going back out to the audience, the ability to synthesize this. And all of that is coming in the distant future of next year and the year after that, right? These changes are going to happen. The biggest change underneath all of this is that the cost structure around big data is going through an improvement curve that looks like this. So that the actual cost of storing exabytes of data and then running Legoized AI against them will be very, 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 very cheap. And so you'll be able to do it everywhere. So processes will become intelligent, engagements will become intelligent, they'll become proactive and precise and pattern matched and peer connected. And think about this kind of event or a hospital or a factory or a football stadium. Do you want to go to the one that's proactive and pattern matched and peer connected and precise and preventative, or do you want to go to the old one? You want to go to the new one, right? It recognizes me, it engages me, and you're going to see that that pervade everything over the next couple of years, and space itself will become mobile. I had an avatar of a gentleman in Berlin and another one in London in this space wearing a HoloLens last week. All of us in real time working on the same whiteboard, all drawing on the same whiteboard, putting charts up on the wall. Now, that's a rudimentary beginning, but that really happened with spatial audio working. So I could, if they were standing over there, I could hear them. If they walked over here, that's in my little attic in the village of Montclair in New Jersey at the beginning of this change.
Thank you very much, Toby. I want to now continue on with innovation. And you mentioned that next generation networks, it's not about just connectivity and bandwidth, it's cementing innovation. Verizon announced most recently, just I think a few days ago, that it has launched next generation mobile service throughout the country. This network covers an area occupied by 200 million people in 1,800 municipalities across the United States. And we were very interested if you could share the transformative power of 5G, which you alluded to, and how it will help us specifically reimagine how we live, how we work, how we play, especially our children now that are spending a lot of time on virtual games. How will this reinvent and transform America? We had this whole long discussion at the commission, but I'm sure you have some really interesting thoughts to share with our audience.
Yeah, so I think especially for young people today who are digging into technology, who are studying, maybe just coming out of university, it is the best time, right? Our friends at the World Economic Forum in Davos call this the fourth industrial revolution. What does that mean? It means they think the change is so big, they align it with the last three industrial revolutions that changed the world. So this fourth one is different in two ways. This one is purely technological. And the second difference is the other ones took decades. This one takes about 6 years. So what is it? How to demystify that? It's very simple. The belief is for technologies, whether you measure them from an output per unit dollar or impact or pervasiveness or capability perspective, in the next 4 or 5 years are going to progress more than they have in the last 20. And those four technologies are AI and big data. It's AR, VR, or as we call it, XR, next-gen cloud, and IoT. Now imagine as those become 50x faster, better, cheaper over the next few years, a really quantum paradigmatic leap for them. Imagine that those can all exist on a software-defined, cloud-native, super low latency, fat bandwidth, built-in compute at the edge, 1000x better for IoT density, 10x better for IoT battery life, super reliable, super secure network. Man, those four technologies would form a flywheel, create lots of new platforms, push AI to the edge, make it omnipresent, make it pervasive, and that would change a lot of things, right? Education and engagement would become very AR, VR intensive. Cameras would turn into intelligence and synthetic IoT. Every process and engagement would have real-time AI built in. That is the underpinning of the fourth industrial revolution that came out of the folks in Davos. The thing I described as the imagine that network, that is literally the 5G network. So their theory is those four technologies plus 5G combine and drive this change. Now the tricky thing about these periods, just like the last industrial revolutions, is within sectors you're going to have winners and losers. Within geographies you're going to have winners and losers. And across industries, you're going to have the same thing. So the real trick in this game is to get in there early, to dig in, to get your hands on these technologies and get moving, because it's a practical thing. It isn't, I learned it from PowerPoint. It's like playing rugby, right? You learn rugby by being on the field, not by watching PowerPoints of rugby, or cooking, right? Commercial cooking is the same way. So very, very exciting time. It's going to be that Schumpeterian creative destruction cycle that we've all heard about, that everybody gets excited about. I think when we use the term creative destruction, the bit that gets ignored a lot is the word destruction. Anytime you go through these phases, if you are not keeping up, you risk losing and destroying your business.
Thank you, Toby. You mentioned a lot about adoption. Adoption of the services is the key. It's not just research and it's not just innovation, it's not just talking about it, it's actually adapting it and make sure it has the valid use case in the industry. And we want to get your guidance and your advice specifically on 5G disrupting different industries, whether it's the insurance industry or financial services and healthcare. What are some of the substantial business models and use cases that you see and you could share with us based on your experience and now all of the proactive work that you and your teams are doing throughout the United States and the world with 5G, that you could share with us practical use cases and examples?
Yeah, two layers of answers there, right? If you look back historically through commercial technology history or military history, which is a richer set of technology changes going further back, the ones that were most successful were the ones that took the new paradigm, the new technology, and said, I'm going to rethink my business. I'm going to rethink my business model. I'm going to innovate at a model level, not the ones that said, I'm going to improve my factory 12% by using the new technology. Now, the second case is also useful. It's also a competitive imperative to change your operational cost structure and your customer engagement and improve those with new technologies. But it was the model innovators, Rockefeller, Sears, Uber with 4G, for example. That's not super clever technology. It's a model innovation. Von Moltke and the Prussian army in the mid 1800s completely changed that model using technology. So that's one thing to really think about. And to demystify model innovation, it's just, how does the business function? How would you design it with the technology that you have today if you had a blank sheet of paper? That is how complicated model innovation is. It's really, really hard to do, but it's not as complicated as some would have you think it. Now, inside of industries, using cameras for real-time sensors, you can take inventory in real time at a shelf level, make sure that it's matched to your plan in a retail environment. You can go from advertising to real-time demand shaping. There are already some very clever things happening out in the field in the insurance environment. In commercial insurance, you can use edge intelligence to create proactive and preventative environments. The leaders out in the insurance world are working with their customers, not just to sell them insurance, but to change their risk profile. So if I can help your factory become safer, more efficient by using these edge technologies, whether that's cognitive video or AI at the edge or next gen AR, I'm changing your model and impacting your risk profile. So while I, as an insurer, may actually make less money with you, I am a deeper, better partner, and I'm now in a change management business. The one thing I think that gets neglected in all of this, whether you're innovating at a process or operational cost structure or consumer or at a model level, is the change management piece is hard. I used to teach a class. I was asked to teach a class on innovation at a special operations command, and I said, look, I will teach that class if you let me teach change management at the same time. There are 4 or 5 different big change management models. One of them works better than all of the others. No amount of technology will help you unless you're good at managing change, right? And that's a very disciplined human communications effort, not a technology effort. And so I'm being good at change, which is a difficult thing. No human wakes up in the morning and goes, boy, I hope I get a lot of change today. No one is comfortable. Well, a few people are comfortable with change, but it's a tiny part of the employee base. So being great at change is a force multiplier for innovating with these new platforms and technologies.
Excellent, Toby. Now that you brought up change, actually, this is the subject of the next question I have. So, according to CNBC, 3 times as many Gen Zers as other generations believe that it's on them rather than their employer to develop new skills. And another thing is Gen Z, we display very high levels of willingness to learn across domains, whatever discipline it happens to be, and we're less resistant to change, as we were just talking about, over other generations. And it has to do with the fact that we're digital transformation, digital AI natives. We grew up with all these changes, so they're kind of a part of us. It's become a resilient infrastructure and preference and everything that fuels Gen Z. So with this in mind, how do you think that Gen Z mindset of not being resistant to change, of wanting to skill ourselves, how is this going to impact the future of work and all of these reskilling and upskilling campaigns that all these enterprises right now are working on, including Verizon, of course? So it would be wonderful to hear your take on this.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. I think they are going to change the way we look at talent, right? And it's really going to be about skills and capability and your capability to learn, right? How mentally flexible are you? Because the one thing that's happening, whether you're looking at science or technology or geopolitics, is the level of change that we're having. It seems like every 3 years they add in another 2 years of change, right? The speed of change is moving, whether you look at things in science like CRISPR or what's happening with big data or some of the political things, you see things that you just wouldn't imagine. So I think where the way that we look at humans in a employment perspective is like, where did you go to university? What jobs did you have? Here's a few interview questions. I think that goes away and it becomes a much more granular, much more intelligent, what's your flexibility? What learning pods have you been in? What skills have you upskilled yourself with? What realms of context are you comfortable with, right? And which ones can you learn? I worked on a wonderful charity thing with President Fox from Mexico, in the north of Mexico, at a place called Centro Fox, where we would profile single mothers for the ability to learn, not how much education they'd have or where they went to school or anything, but just their attitude and their ability to learn. And then we would put them through 90 days of paid IT training. And at the end of 90 days, and that's 720 hours of training, they would take real jobs with American companies that were putting the jobs there at an economically beneficial rate, but they would have real jobs doing this. And if I can do that with high school educated or less than high school educated single mothers in the north of Mexico to make them IT professionals in 90 days, what can a Gen Z person do with all of the available resources to them? And I think what happens is they become such a valuable and big cohort within companies that companies start to reshape themselves to manage that. And then I think the biggest thing that happens inside companies, this is maybe 5-10 years from now, is you look at talent as a migratory capability. You don't just have silos of workers. You're in AR, you're in IT, you're in sales, you're in engineering. You have people with skills and talent that you have the intelligence behind it. So they self-assemble or they assemble into groups to tackle the work as it comes throughout the year and as things change. So your talent maps is a migration of talent with Gen Z. And I think the companies that get that first are absolutely going to win. And I think if you're also going to win in this space, you can't just talk about work-life balance, right? Because I don't know a Gen Z person that thinks working 70 hours a week is a good idea. Now, I know a bunch of people my age, especially in America, who think it's a good idea. I personally don't. It's one of my weaknesses, but I'm trying hard.
Thank you very much, Toby, for your guidance and advice on change, specifically related to Gen Z. I want to take us to digitalization. And you recently alluded to, in one of your comments, you spoke about Industry 4.0. You came out and said something today on how Industry 4.0, now next Society 5.0, transforming our way of life based on all of those components that were put out by World Economic Forum and the German government. But now you also have emphasized so-called radical digitalization, showcasing how the pandemic has spotlighted how digital is truly a transformative moment, a transformative investment. President of Microsoft, Satya, has come out and said that anything that could be done in 3 months, in 3 years, could now be done literally in 3 months or less. It's accelerating the process towards the future. It is enabling companies not only to boost productivity, as you mentioned, but engage and communicate with their employees, their customers, their stakeholders in a way that they don't think it was possible. Can you expand on this concept for our audience and radical digitalization as we're seeing now during the time of pandemic?
I am a flaming optimist. I can see the positive side in just about anything. And this crisis, as painful and as horrible as it has been, and the economic crisis that is attached to it, I think it's changed three things. It lets you really bifurcate your focus between this is the important stuff and this really isn't, right? I've talked to 50 companies that, that Thursday meeting we used to have every Thursday, we decided we could have it every other Thursday, and then we moved it to once a month, and then we went, why are we even doing that, right? So those less than valuable things are moving out. The combination of the crisis that we hear about in the media all the time and the worries of constrained markets over the next year or two, those two really sharpen your focus. And again, that makes you look at things in a much more optimizing way, which means don't waste any time, get it out of the door, get going. And it also gives, a crisis also gives people permission to break the rules. The rules were we need 3 committee meetings and we need 7 approvals, and how about we just build it, right, and go do that. So I think you're seeing more and more of that, and a permission to get it out the door, break it till you make it, right, that sort of startup perspective. And then I think it's just basic modern technology, right? If I can digitize a process, I can study it, I can analyze it, I can run ML against it, I can find opportunities for improvement, I can find patterns that I hadn't seen before. I can take out defects. So I think when enterprises are looking at the future and worried about the competitive nature, especially in constrained markets, you're going to see people really, really step on the gas and try not to be leapfrogged in technology. I mean, a proof point is a giant European company. The risk committee on the board of directors wants to have a discussion about these technologies because at a risk committee on the board of directors, they're worried about what happens if this radical digitalization gets to their competitors before them and their cost structure and their customer engagement is better. They will not make it up in any other way. Optimizing cost structure and customer engagement, that's pretty much all your business really is, right? So yeah, I think the positive side of crisis is waste elimination, cycle time improves, more experimentation, more innovation, and maybe just a little bit more humility and a little more willingness to listen. We honestly believe that a sustainable competitive advantage is partnering. I run a bunch of innovation labs. We use a tiny little company to help us with those. And we're this giant elephant, right? And we've actually got just enough humility to go, they're probably better at this with them, so let's partner. Now, do we step on them occasionally as the giant clumsy elephant and they're the little mouse? Sure. But there are a lot of companies who would say, oh, we're smart enough, we can do it by ourselves. I think, honestly, the partnering and the connectivity is an anchor to fast cycle and a better output.
Thank you very much, Toby. This was very insightful. I want to, in the interest of time, just to pass this to Angelina for an insight, a short insight from European Union, and then to Angelica to close out our session today and for closing comments. So, Angelina, to you for some insights that maybe you could share from European Union, and then we go to Angelica to close.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mark. As a pioneering 5G company, Verizon has opened up many innovation labs that deal with development of the 5G in Europe and the United States as well. And Europe has been known for one of the innovation hubs and one of the startup hubs as well. So what is your take on how has this growing startup scene affect the development of 5G?
So I think it's hugely important, the entire startup innovation world. The startup world is a gravitational pull for the most innovative people, right? These are people who say, look, I know that's risky, I know it's really difficult, but I love innovation so much, I'm going to go do that, right? They're not the people that said, I'm going to go be an accountant in that company, right? No disrespect to my accountant friends. But so to be able to partner and to experiment with those is really important. But the real secret of it is to be geographically dispersed, right? There are amazing things going on in Europe. Some amazing things in Berlin. The public-private partnership that has happened over the last 4 years in France, for example, is really impressive. I think that's a model that should be adopted in a lot of places. And we put a big lab in London. Unfortunately, opened it right before COVID started, but it's an amazing place. But the key isn't just setting that up and believing it and doing it. The real key is allowing things to fail and to break, right? If in the typical big company perspective, you're going, well, we're going to do 10 startups and 9 of them are going to succeed, that is never a model. When I look at interviewing people, I had this conversation with a young kid on Saturday who'd been he said, well, I was in a startup and it failed, and he was kind of apologetic about that. And I go, no, being in a startup that failed is way more better learning than being in a startup that just happened to succeed, right? So I think that failure has real value.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Toby, again, for joining us today on the dialogue and hearing your passionate insights about 5G, artificial intelligence, the future of work, and how the younger generation is going to influence this future digital economy. So we really look forward to sharing all of your thoughts with our global audience as our digital pioneer. And again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.